Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. I'm Dr. Mitch Wolf. I'm a family physician here at SSM, and I'm one of the team that has been working with Veggie Rx for a number of years now. This is our program to help you get healthy food into your hands, and hopefully with the goal of improving your health and nutrition at the same time. We have been doing this program now. This is our 19th cycle, as you probably have heard. So hopefully we got the bugs worked out. We have an interesting program ready for you over the next 12 weeks. We're going to introduce you to healthy food and think of food as medicine. That's kind of our tagline. We started doing this a number of years ago after we were kind of discussing. Some of us were thinking, well, food is really the best medicine, so maybe we can incorporate healthy diet into people's lives and see if we can make a better difference for them. That's not a new idea. Food as medicine has been around for a very long time. But what we're trying to do is, instead of treating symptoms, is really to treat the underlying issues that go on, okay? Let me roll that back for a sec. Okay, so what are we talking about basically? Chronic illness. That's what I see every day as a family practice doctor. People have diseases that they deal with over the long term for years, decades, a lot of medicines, a lot of doctor visits. These are all the kind of the bread and butter of primary care. These are all chronic illnesses that take up a lot of people's lives. In this country, about 6 in 10 people have at least one chronic disease. Oopsie. And about 4 in 10 have 2 or more, okay? If you look around the world, there's a great disparity in the rates of chronic disease. This looks at about 300 different chronic diseases. And what's interesting about this graphic is, in the US here, where we supposedly have such great health care, we have among the highest rate of chronic disease. What's going on with that? Well, you're going to find out in a minute. It's what we're putting in our mouths. Here's a little graphic that looks at obesity and diabetes tracked from the last, this is actually the most recent data here is 2015, but you kind of get the picture of the map changing. You know, from the left here to the right, the red is the higher rates of obesity. And again, this program is not necessarily talking about weight and obesity, but it tends to run hand in hand with conditions like diabetes and other chronic illnesses. Okay, so we kind of use obesity as a marker for chronic illness. But you can see the map changing, and a lot of it is concentrated in the South. But, you know, people are getting older. Their quality of life is going down. People take a lot of medications. They spend a lot of their day going to doctor visits and tending to their chronic illnesses. And unfortunately, that means taking more and more medications a lot of times. If you have several doctors, several specialists, they're all going to give you something out of their prescription pad, you know. A lot of factors go into what your individual health situation is, anything from the genetics you were born with, your family's health. Add on to that your diet and exercise routine, your stress coping. Add on top of that social factors like the availability of transportation, social support, things like that, community programs. So it's complex interaction that goes into your own personal health status. Right? So why is there so much chronic disease? Well, of course, we're here to talk about diet, so we're going to go ahead and get it right out there. The SAD, the Standard American Diet, a lot of refined foods, a lot of fast food, processed foods, lots of chemicals, and unfortunately, sometimes not a lot of nutrition. So that's really what we're going to hone in on here. If you look at lifestyle factors, besides diet, there's activity levels. We as a society, particularly in this country, are noted to be sedentary. Stress factors are a big problem, and of course toxins that we put in our bodies voluntarily. I'd like to go over a few of the normal things that I see in my day as a primary care physician, and we're going to start with heart disease because that is the number one killer, has been for the last 50 years since they've been tracking these numbers. When we talk about heart disease, we're talking about coronary artery disease, the blockages that happen in the arteries as time goes by. So I like to think of that like when you buy a new house and the pipes are nice and clean and the water flow is great. And then as time goes by, you know, when you live like in a 90-year-old house like I do, stuff tends to get gunked up in the pipes and the flow is not that great. Well, that in the human body, that stuff that gunks up is that yellow stuff there called cholesterol or plaque, which gradually narrows the arteries. May not be a big deal early in the game, but as it gets to this stage here, you've got severe narrowing of blood flow. If you look at this kind of blow up here, this yellow fluffy stuff is cholesterol, which we've all heard of. Some cholesterol is good. We need it to kind of hold our cells together. But too much of it is not a good thing, and it can start to narrow the channel here in this artery. Next thing you know, a blood clot comes along and completely blocks the artery, and everything downstream is not getting enough blood flow. Translation, heart attack or stroke, depending on where it's happening. Okay, so the other thing that I see frequently is diabetes. That's probably half my day every day is spent helping people with blood sugars and the complications of the blood sugars. I say it that way because, you poke your finger and you get a number, but it's not the number that's causing problems. It's the complications of diabetes, the high blood sugar damaging the tissues of the body, kidney failure, numbness in the feet, nerve damage, eye problems, strokes, heart attacks, that whole thing. And that's the end result of chronically elevated blood sugars. The other one we see routinely, daily, is hypertension or high blood pressure. Okay, that's very common. It goes up with age. Why? Because our arteries harden as we get older, and the heart has to generate a higher pressure to get blood to the tissues of the body. But it's the same thing. It's not just the numbers that you see when you pump up the cuff. It's what's happening to the body tissues. That high blood pressure is causing damage, kidney problems, strokes, heart attacks. Okay? So these are the common things that we see and are representative of what we call chronic illnesses. Okay? The old solution is basically pills, and lots of them, okay? Traditional medical training is, there's a pill for every ill. You have, cholesterol, we have pills for that. High blood pressure, lots of pills for that. Diabetes, there's pills and shots and pumps and all that kind of stuff, okay? The issue we're talking about, though, is that these are artificial chemicals. These are things that were cooked up in a lab, by and large. And so our bodies don't really know what to do with them. We don't know how to metabolize these drugs. They may temporarily help a symptom, but the point I try to drive home is that pills don't cure any diseases, okay? You're not going to get rid of a condition by taking more and more medications. And of course, the more medications you take, the more chance there is of interactions, side effects, not to mention the cost that adds up. Generic drugs, $4, $5, $10. You get one of those brand name drugs, you're going to see your total go up, right? In medicine, we're taught, pathology and biochemistry and pharmacology and, what medicine do we use for what condition. And that's the bulk of medical training, or at least that was back in the day. I don't know how much nutrition they teach now, but I sure didn't get maybe about an hour in med school. I vividly remember that. All right, so here's just a kind of a screenshot of an average person in my practice with this number of problems on the left and this number of medications used to treat those problems. And that is not an uncommon situation at all. So, how many medications are we talking about? The U.S. consumes the most prescription drugs. More than 100 million people take at least one prescription medication, and the average is 4. Then you get down here, who's taking the most medications? The elderly, the people that have been around a while and have seen a lot of doctors. Also the folks that have the slowest metabolism and are more likely to have drug interactions and side effects. And that can lead to things like falls and worse, and we won't even go there, okay? So you get this chain reaction of medications, okay? They give you one medication and you get a side effect and the doctor says, well, I've got something for that. They give you another pill, and next thing you know, you've got this domino effect of 10, 15, 20 medications like a couple of slides ago, right? So the underlying issue here is, we're trying to have a good metabolism. We're trying to burn the calories that we have, okay? You need energy for that. So I like to think of the body as a factory. Here's, a factory using, coal or gas or whatever as its fuel, and that's creating energy for the system to function, okay? Well, we need the right fuel for our bodies, and that's the right fuel right there. Healthy, colorful stuff that grows in the earth. Fruits and vegetables come out of the ground with all the nutrients that we need to function. And with a diet like that, you're less likely to have what we call inflammation. Inflammation is what happens down at the cellular level where the white blood cells release chemicals that can help get rid of trouble and foreign invaders and things like that. Inflammation can be a good thing in the short term by helping you, help fight an infection, heal up a wound. That's part of normal inflammation. That can be a good thing. The problem is long term when you have chronic inflammation, which can be brought on by, diet and obesity and stuff like that. And that can actually work against you over the long haul. It can affect your metabolism, can create resistance to insulin, and a whole host of other things. Inflammation in the blood vessels leads to heart disease. So when you look at this here, you can see either a bunch of different diseases you see here, or you can think of this as one problem with a lot of different end results, which is the diseases that we were talking about today, okay? So if we can address the underlying issue, the central theme, hopefully we can affect your overall health. So what are the causes of inflammation? Well, okay, we're gonna go back to that diet again. Processed food that has a lot of additives, preservatives, stuff that makes it look better and stuff that makes it last longer on the shelf, but that's not doing our metabolism any favors, okay? And then there's other things out there, stuff that that's in the environment that makes it into our food supply, pesticides, for example, stuff we breathe in through our lungs that then goes into our bloodstream and becomes part of us. Toxins, again, that we voluntarily put into our bodies, alcohol, tobacco. Stress is a big factor and kind of unavoidable in this crazy life. Problem with stress is, and it's very similar, where short-term stress may be a good thing for you. It may help you get through a rough time. It may help you run away from a wild animal. But stress over the long term puts exactly that. Stress on the system can lead to high blood pressure, vascular damage, and so again, over the long term, it's not a great thing. So how do we treat inflammation? Well, the first thing we're going to talk about, of course, is diet, the typical anti-inflammatory diet, which includes whole foods, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, healthy fats. A lot of options for that. Lifestyle factors are huge, making sure we're getting enough regular exercise in our daily routine. Sleep is an often overlooked factor. We've got to make sure we're getting enough rest to allow our bodies to heal. Stress management, find a way to blow off your steam. And of course, there's medications, which is kind of outside the scope of this discussion, but remember that supplements may be good as first line. A lot of people take things like omega-3 fish oil supplements, which have natural anti-inflammatory properties, so do vitamin D supplements. Curcumin, which is the active ingredient in turmeric, the spice. I find a lot of people are taking that these days to help with the aches and pains of life. And of course, medications, either prescription or over the counter, again, outside the scope here, but bottom line is make sure you talk to your doc before you start any supplements or medications. We got this guy here as an example of the couch potato, sedentary lifestyle, okay? Got all the modern conveniences there. He's got Netflix, he's got DoorDash, he's got everything he needs. So he's sitting around on the couch, and what's happening to him? He's getting out of shape, he's losing muscle mass, and as a result of that, metabolism slowing down, and he's starting to get a belly on him, okay? And that's not necessarily that bad. I mean, a little weight is not that bad. The question is, where is the weight? Okay, so you've heard about body type, the apple versus the pear. You probably heard of that one. So this lady here on the right, she seems to be carrying her weight in her bottom, below the waist, and she may not be happy about that, but I'm a little more concerned about the lady on the left who is shaped like an apple, as we say. The weight is concentrated in the midsection, okay? And when you see that, you're thinking, what's happening below the surface? And what's happening is that fat is depositing around the internal organs, which again can lead to inflammation, insulin resistance, problems with metabolism. And so that's maybe a little bit scary looking when you see that, but to me, this is even more scary looking. This is the next generation of our society. Kids that have been brought up on, fast food and video games and not running around riding their bikes like we all did when we were kids. And this is leading to pretty much an epidemic of obesity and diabetes in kids that are not even out of high school yet. And we see it. I don't see little kids. I see 12 and up, but we're starting to see this. So that's really scary. Okay, so what should we be eating? Well, let's talk about that whole food. What's a whole food? Not just a grocery store. Whole food versus processed foods, okay? A whole food is something that you can hold in your hand and you know what it is. It has one ingredient. It's an apple, it's an orange, it's a cucumber. You don't need a label to tell you what's in it. It came out of the earth with one thing in it. Lots of nutrients. Okay. Then you see this when you start going around the grocery store and you see stuff that has a plastic wrap on it with a big label, and you start reading that and you see all the stuff that you can't even pronounce, a bunch of chemicals and preservatives and flavor enhancers and stuff that I don't even know why it's in there. But that can't be good for you. Those are, artificial chemicals. And so, again, our bodies don't know what to do with them. So, circling back around, there's artificial chemicals too. So, let's talk about maybe what we can do differently, okay? Maybe there's a new solution out there. Let's all think outside the box, as they say. Let's see, anybody know this guy? That's Hippocrates. He's retired now. He lives in Boca Raton, I believe. But anyways, he said 5,000 years ago, food is the best medicine, okay? It's painted on the wall right out there if you want to go to the cafeteria and get something to eat. And so that's kind of that's our mindset here. Food is medicine. What can we substitute some of these drugs we're eating or taking and get in some healthy food? And maybe that's what our bodies really, really want, okay? So we're going to try to get away from this a little bit. And because, we're talking about primarily diet here. So let's contrast that with what I would consider one of the healthy eating programs. Most people have heard of the Mediterranean diet. Well, what do you see on there? You see certainly a lot of colorful fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, things that come from the earth. You see nuts, which have healthy fats. You see healthy protein like fish. Maybe you're not a fish fan, but that's okay. You can get your protein elsewhere. Berries have lots of nutrients. Healthy fats like avocado, olive oil up there. They call it that. Why do they call it this? Well, because the people in France and Italy, they eat great, let me tell you. And they have less heart disease than we Americans do. So maybe we can emulate that. And a lot of it boils down to how to put a meal together. You're going to hear a lot of that from our registered dietitian, Andrea, who's going to talk to you a lot about how to assemble meals and what the different food groups are. If you just imagine this as just kind of a ballpark figure, maybe half of what you eat as plant-based materials, about this much from protein, about this much from carbs, whole grains, complex carbohydrates, as opposed to white fluffy stuff. And don't let us miss drinking lots of water. That's important. So, what if we thought of food as medicine, okay? What if your doctor could prescribe healthy food like they would whip out the prescription pad and write you for some Atenolol or Lipitor or Metformin or whatever the drug du jour is? And then ask yourself, are you eating enough fresh fruits and vegetables? Some people don't eat any. Some people say, I'm a meat and potatoes guy, doc. I had a guy last week, I swear, he told me, he said, I haven't had a vegetable in 73 years. I'm like, well, that's why you're here today. And maybe you like to have a salad. That's great. So we're not trying to make you eat all vegetables. We're not trying to create vegans or vegetarians in this program. We want to help you augment or add to whatever you are having currently, maybe with a little bit more, okay? When was the last time your doctor asked you what you ate? Did doctors ask that? I don't know if they do. I do, because I'm kind of curious, and I think, and of course, I'm coming from this, but I get the feeling that in that 15-minute visit, there's not a lot of discussion about diet. I hope I'm wrong. All right, anybody recognize that street? Could be anywhere in America. One fast food joint after another. In our case, it's Kickapoo, right? Fast food is easily available, okay? Convenient, easily available, fast, that's why they call it that. Cheap, but unfortunately lacking in nutrition. A lot of processing goes into those foods, and the nutrition kind of is a casualty of that. Now the thing about the fast food is remember that a lot of processed foods you're not maybe getting enough nutrients. So sometimes you'll have that combo meal and you don't really feel full. You feel like you're still hungry and your body's saying, well, you need more food. So you go back and you get that second combo meal and you've doubled your calories, but you still haven't gotten much more nutrition. And that's kind of what I look at as the trap of fast food. I've had this slide in there for a while. That's COVID virus. You may think, well, that's, thing of the past. Well, we're still dealing with a lot of the fallout from that in our society as far as habits and workflows and things like that. Certainly there's a lot of folks that are, getting their meals delivered to them, which translates into less activity and less social interaction. This is what we were doing all today. We're still doing Zoom. Employers have sent people home permanently that are working from home. And so that brings its own challenges. Lack of activity, lack of social interaction. And I don't know how long that's here to stay. So one of the things you're going to hear from us is eat the rainbow. The first thing you notice about this is that you see a lot of different colors, okay? It is a rainbow. Phytonutrients, which are these guys here, are the different colors of vegetables and fruits that all have different nutrients. So the more variety of color in your diet, the more of a diverse selection of nutrients you're going to get. Okay? So that's all good stuff there. Came right out of the earth. No preservatives. So you may say, well, can't I just get vitamins at Walmart/Walgreens/Costco/Sam's Club/Amazon? Possibly, but you can't guarantee what the content is, the purity, the safety, where it came from, how long it's been sitting in the warehouse. That's one factor. The other factor is, how do you know what to take? You can't just go take one of everything. And the third thing is that vitamins and nutrients get absorbed from food better than they do from pills. So all things being equal, you're going to get more vitamin C out of an orange than a vitamin C capsule. So most of what you need, if you look down the left side here, is the major nutrient groups. You can pretty much get that from plant-based materials with a few exceptions. So that brings us to Veggie Rx. This program that kind of got cooked up a few years ago, initially as part of Blue Zones, and now taken over by SSM. Thank you guys. Where we're going to help you get certain amount of produce weekly for 12 weeks. The dollar amount depends on the size of your family, and you hear about that from Julie and Andrea. And we're going to get this healthy food to you and also hopefully teach you what to do with it. You may not be a great chef. That's fine. Andrea has a ton of great education that's coming your way live and on Facebook about how to put meals together and get the most out of the produce we're going to get you. And our goal, our hope is that these are skills that you can use for the long term. This is a 12-week, experience here, but hopefully you pick up some nuggets of, knowledge that you can carry with you forever and make healthy food for you and your family. So we'll help you get the raw materials. Again, I got to give a shout out to Fire Lake, who has been a wonderful partner all these years, and we pretty much have a good rhythm going with them. Julie will tell you about the actual mechanics of the program, and of course our friends here at SSM who have basically taken the whole program over and are footing the bill. So we give them thanks. A lot of education coming your way that you're going to hear about from Andrea on healthy eating, eating on the go, eating with your family, eating out, snacking, you name it, she's got it. So we're going to hopefully not just give you the food, but tell you what to do with it. She rubbed off on me. Now, this is last week. We went to Sprouts in the city and loaded up the whole car and brought everything home and washed it and put it out. And we're going to cut it up so it's easy to grab on the run, okay? That's a big thing these days is just everybody's busy going from one activity to another. And you got to make it easy to eat healthy. Otherwise, it's not going to happen, okay? So, yesterday I took some of that celery that's on the counter there and I cut it up, put it in a container, grabbed some hummus, put it in a container, and I just basically grabbed it in about 10 seconds on the way out the door because I have a busy life too. So, all right, we're going to be checking numbers. You heard about the blood work. You've had the blood work. We do this at the beginning and the end of the program so we can hopefully demonstrate that we're doing a good job. And we're checking things like blood sugar, cholesterol, numbers. Andrea is going to talk to you about that. But historically, we've seen people improve their weight, their blood pressure, their blood sugars, and best case scenario is hopefully we can help people maybe get off some medications, which is kind of one of the common themes here. So you'll hear all about the different breakdowns of blood sugars and cholesterol fractions and all that here in just a moment from Andrea. So again, we're not trying to create any vegans or vegetarians here. We're just going to help you increase the amount of produce you're putting in your diet right now. So I challenge you to think of food as medicine and get that prescription from us and have it filled.